Welcome everyone to another episode of the Chain Abstraction series podcast with us here at Arcana. Today is a great day. We are going to be talking to someone who I've been following for quite some time in the Web3 space, and I've been seeing a lot of his Twitter spaces. I especially like the fact that he doesn't hold anything back, which should make for a very it should make for a very interesting conversation, if not anything else. So fantastic to have you, Dean. Dean is the founder and CEO of Agoric. Hello, Dean, and welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you much. Good to see you all.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this because, of course, I would love to learn more about, orchestration in general, what your thoughts are, why do you guys take this route, etc., etc. I think we'll get into the weeds of all of that. Where you're seeing these sort of like orchestration use cases outside of course, chain abstraction. That's the main area that we'd like to focus on. But what else are you seeing? And just future and what do you see this like chain abstraction in general affecting the whole Web3 space over the next weeks, months, years, and in general? I think with someone of your experience, I think you should be able to kind of make those extrapolations. So, I'm really curious to know some of these things. So, why don't we just get started right away?
Right.
Let's start with, just basic introductions, your background, Dean. I think it'd be really helpful. I'm sure you have quite the resume.
So, sure. So I'm Dean Tribble. I'm CEO of Agoric and one of the founders. And I've been doing large-scale distributed systems for entirely too long. I worked on the first production smart contract back in 1989 and worked at Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center before that on large-scale distributed systems. So the idea of large-scale distributed systems has always been fascinating, and the idea of software that can help people, right? And so smart contracts are software that enforces the terms of a contract-like arrangement between third parties. That idea of enabling software to help grow economics and fundamentally enable strangers to cooperate has always been a driving vision. And, so it's driven, early days of internet and early large scale e-commerce and B2B business and, just online business stuff. So, that structure of, eBay, PayPal, Venmo, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, those are all smart contract businesses before blockchain. And when blockchain came out, it gave you this platform for deploying smart contracts where you didn't need this trusted intermediary, right? You didn't need to rely on StubHub to not take the best seat deals and give it to their executives, which is, I'm not saying they do that, but how do you know, right? You wouldn't rely on Enron to not take the best energy deals and slip it in before the close of business. That we do know happened, right? So it's one of those things where blockchain gives you this integrity of execution that now enables a much richer, online economy that we're all just barely at the beginning of. And so that's, that's what motivates building all this technology. And, and we'll get into chain abstraction and orchestration and why those are just the critical, important next step in evolution in that process.
No, great. So integrity of execution, I think that's a great way to put it, describe blockchains in general. And the removal of rent seekers, intermediaries who can or may not be malicious. Fantastic. I mean, these are great reasons to kind of get into the space. But why don't you tell us a bit more about when did you get in and what makes you stick here? Why?
Sure.
Why the perseverance?
So I got in. Zuko of Zcash and a few others brought us in because we'd worked with them before on various zero knowledge things and early cypherpunks, right? And there was all these issues that happened in 2017 with security experts deploying a contract on Ethereum and losing $30 million. So they deployed a bug fix and lost another $30 million. Right? It's one of those things where they knew we had been doing smart contracts outside of blockchain and had a different approach to how you do that, right? And so there was a powwow to see whether that different approach would apply to blockchain, whether that different approach used for Web 2, if you will, which is not, of course, what they call it. And the answer seemed to be yes, and so that was the start of the company. Now, it turns out, much of what we've built over time is software to orchestrate the activity of lots of asynchronous activities, right? Lots of asynchronous things, right? So machines owned and operated by independent parties, all trying to cooperate over secure protocols with each other. I go back to blockchain gives you high integrity. I think of in that overall architecture of the economy of independent businesses cooperating with each other, people running different machines that are all using each other as microservices and that sort of thing. I think of a blockchain as a machine built out of agreement, out of consensus rather than out of silicon, right? And so we have secure protocols, and this inspired the architecture of IBC, which has inspired, Hyperlane and Union Bridge and all these other things, right? And that architecture of secure protocols between sovereign independent entities is, how the rest of the economy already works. And now that's moved into, and that is what we saw as the inevitable future of blockchain at a time where everyone was in tribes going, we're going to be the only winner and everyone else is dumb, right? And so to us, it was always going to be a bunch of, Ethereum's a machine, Solana's a machine, Cosmos recognized that and has toolkits to make lots and lots of machines, Celestia, Saga Dimension, etc. They've now got this modular thing to make even more machines that all should use, that are now connected with protocols, but they all should use each other, right? I don't need to build yet another DEX when I can just as easily asynchronously call Osmosis, right? And or some other, or any of the existing DEXs. And so that model of connected worlds was something that we've been building towards. Turns out coordinating, orchestrating asynchronous activity is really hard, right? It's something where existing blockchains, Solidity, Cosmwasm, Solana, etc., they're all designed for programs that start and end within a block, right? That I can do a swap easily in a, stop the world, hang on, I'm doing my trade, let me do my trade. Okay, I've done it now. Okay, now you can go, right? And then we can, vote on who goes first or prioritize it by price, an auction, or whatever it is. But that's a very simple world. The real world can't work that way, can't scale that way. And people, fought that for a long time because they liked the simplicity of it, but that just doesn't, that's just not, we are now clearly in the world that we predicted of lots and lots of chains all talking to each other. But mostly they are just connected, and the users have to hand carry their assets, right? That you've got, and we're getting tools that are better and better at hand carrying their assets. And that's good that they're better and better at hand carrying their assets. But when I bought my plane ticket to Dubai, I'm going to Cosmoverse it, in 3 hours or 5 hours or whatever it is. I didn't have to hand carry my assets. I just pushed a button and bought a plane ticket, right? I got what I wanted. I got this end-to-end thing. And so that's the first step of where we need to get to. And that first step of, the first step of chain abstraction is making it easy to hand carry my assets, right? There's lots of little, what I refer to as point solutions, but that getting the end-to-end use case, that's what we've always been focused on. That's what orchestration is. That requires technology that has taken us years to build. And, and now it's released. Now we have the core of it out there. People are building on it, and we're very excited about what the future holds for orchestration and chain abstraction.
Fantastic. No, I first want to touch upon one thing. You spoke about how probably Zuko was one of the reasons why you even discovered the space, and it's actually something we sort of share because I think given your history of working in distributed systems, one of the first things that me and some of my co-founders we tried in the Web3 space was building a decentralized storage platform on top of Tahoe LAFS.
Oh, so, wow! Okay. Brian Warner's is our lead kernel engineer. He's Tahoe as well, right?
Fantastic.
Wow. Okay.
No, awesome. Yeah, it was just an interesting anecdote, but yeah, no. Yeah. I think you put it again extremely concisely and so well, where you're talking about how things have gotten to a point where everyone's just trying to over-optimize on allowing people to kind of hand carry their assets around from one chain to another chain. Whereas what you kind of need to do is, like you said, you bought a ticket probably for an airline that isn't based in your country, and you probably paid with US dollar and things like that, and it was all click of a button, everything just got managed for you, right? So we need to get to that space in the for Web3. But before we kind of get to how exactly chain abstraction, especially with, say, perhaps orchestration, gets us to that place, can you, for the audience that's listening in, just explain with an example what is orchestration? Like, what if you can just talk about, the status quo, where today if I tried something and it would work this way, but orchestration comes in and voila, my life, whether it's a developer or whether it's a end user, all our lives are better. Can you just give that
Yes.
one example?
Yeah, sure. So, back to my example of these systems are designed for doing stuff in a single block. I can do a swap now, but or I can, and now you've got these fancier things that fit into the chain abstraction world of I can do a transfer. I've got one asset here. I've got X on chain A. I want Y on chain B. Push one button and it happens. Whether it's with with pools and automated transfer, or routing over different things, or an underwriter doing it, whatever it is. That's a thing that people are starting to abstract. But most use cases, and we've got lots of people come to us with these use cases, that's not what users want to do. They only want to do that because we make them, grovel on the ground and take all of their own steps. What they want to do is, I've got some money over here in a yield position. It's like, I got some money in a mutual fund. I want to put a down payment on a house, right? Make that happen. Do it, right? The fact that requires liquidating that position and then transferring it over here and then moving it over to a bank in Portugal and converting it to EU and then go putting it over, figure it out, right? You're the expert. And so that ability to do something, move the money, and then do something with it is the next 10x, 100x of use cases, right? I've got money on Ethereum. I want to buy a ticket that's on, Omniflix and Cosmos, or I want to buy Celestia token and stake it, or I want to, liquidate some Atom position, move it over ETH, and buy, the Arcana token, who has an X in it, and I don't quite, ZAR, right? Right, whatever that is. That's what I want to do. I do not want to do the liquidation, figure out which of the several bridges I want to move this on, and then go do a swap on whatever that local market is that I don't have position on and I don't have the gas for, and then do the staking and the liquidation. I want to push the button and do that end-to-end thing, make it happen. We've got software. That's what computers are good at, right? And the thing is, right now in crypto, they're not good at it. They're not good at this thing that in Web 2 we take for granted, right? Every service, everything that we use online is using multiple microservices hosted by multiple parties that are operating in multiple different environments, and it's all seamless and invisible to us, mostly, right? So my usual example, and this is, these examples are both chain abstraction, but also orchestration, right? Chain abstraction is sort of this high level challenge of users want to use assets and services, crypto assets and services, independent of the underlying infrastructure, right? And there's lots of particular use cases you might simplify that way. But that general case of, I want to be able to do all the things and authorize a use case that spans more than one transaction, right? The use case starts when I begin searching and ends when I get a ticket. It doesn't start, in 1 second and end 4 seconds later, right? And so that ability to program and orchestrate the activity of multiple different asynchronous things in order to deliver a simple use case to the user, and from a developer perspective, to make building that easy so that we all as builders can build these simple use cases for users that take advantage of all the power of all the projects that are being built out there and getting connected to us. That is what orchestration is the ability to create those seamless user experiences that deliver the simplicity that users demand and deliver the power that they will increasingly demand.
That's great. I think you put it very well earlier, saying move the money and then do something with it. That, I think, very concisely describes orchestration, because I think the moving the money part is typically what users would do on bridges as of today. And that if you think about it, like, no user wants to bridge but needs to bridge, because they want to be able to do something beyond that, right?
Right.
And so fundamentally, we're talking here about the intention of the user and basically what loosely termed as intents within the space. So I intend to have funds that I hold on this chain to actually end up on this chain. I intend to do something further with those funds that I end up with on a particular chain and do something else. Like, for example, I hold ETH on base and I want to end up with USDC because I want to open a liquidity position on Aave, on Optimism, for example, because the API is good.
Well, but
So
realize you didn't want the USDC. You wanted to open the liquidity position, right?
exactly,
You had this and you wanted that. Yeah.
yes. So basically, what you're saying is that chain abstraction sort of helps people get from this point of getting this ETH that they hold on base to getting the USDC, but now orchestration can help take it further, which is that actually complete the final set of steps, which could be a multi-step process thereafter, right? So that's essentially what you guys are enabling. So you
Um,
would think of chain abstraction as like a subset of the capabilities of orchestration.
so I think multiple things at the same time, right? So I think of chain abstraction mostly as the challenge, and so it is this broad. If you look at like the roll-ups map of chain abstraction, it covers a broad thing. In the flavor of users want to be able to use crypto assets and services without having to deal with all the crap, right? Without all the plumbing and your tribes and all that sort of stuff. And so, from a user challenge point of view, it includes all the things that are simple expressions for the user that are directly what are their use cases. There are lots of providers in the overall umbrella of chain abstraction space that are focused on a particular area of use cases. So intents is an example where people fluff about it, talk about it. Fundamentally, it's the use case of I want to do a swap, right? I mean, it could be used, and indeed Anoma and the people who came, and our offer system is an early intents system and that sort of stuff. It can be used for more general stuff. There's no question. But most of the people talking about intents are talking about a simpler way to think about doing cross-chain swaps from a user experience point of view. It's just like, I want to express, I've got this thing here and I want that thing there. You figure it out. And whether that's routing or underwriting or whatever, I don't care. That's an intense user experience. And it may be that the underlying APIs have intense APIs as simplified cross-chain swap mechanics for a richer use case. So as providers come out with these intent style systems, or this new API for doing better, more abstract cross-chain swaps, a process that we automate, a process that we orchestrate can use that as a, unbond this yield position, invoke, a cross, or, or IBC fun, or, skip go, or any of these things, debridge, whatever, right? To move my money. And then we pick it up on the other side and do something with it, right? The thing that right now the humans are having to do. And so, chain abstraction is an attitude from my perspective about, gee, we ought to be thinking about what the user wants out of this when we deliver these tools and abstractions. And so it can be broad. Orchestration is the is the next level of, great, now you've thought about what the user wants, you've thought about, most people think about simple transactions of what the user wants, and what orchestration is the broader use case that is built from these simpler pieces. So, the other thing we talk about, like orchestration gives you behavior across chain, cross ecosystem, cross token, and across time, right? So the example of, I've got USDC in my ETH wallet, and I want stake Celestia token. And every day I want to redeem the rewards and sell half of them in order to pay my staff, and take the other half and build up a position, in agoric build, right? Well, that's what I want. Make that strategy happen, where what I approve, the single approval, is to approve that use case that involves behavior over time. Right. Or improve, what are simpler things that people think of as simpler, but are extremely difficult right now in blockchain: subscriptions, right? I'm approving you to pay for this once a month, for the next 12 months. Yeah, that turns out to be really hard, because they can't do timers. They can't. I mean, they just didn't deal with anything except let's do atomic actions that happen in 5 seconds or less.
Understood. So I think from what I gather from whatever you said, so it is a lot of things, but just so I can sort of just make it more concise for everyone out here. So you could look at what the user's needs are, what the user wants to do, which could be a series of actions leading to perhaps multiple reasons to, or needs or wants to kind of do cross-chain swaps in between, and then followed by another series of actions. And all of this entire thing could be orchestrated using various sorts of tools. But chain abstraction in itself is limited to, currently at least, the definition to be able to kind of enable these cross-chain swaps in a simpler way. That's great.
A lot of it is.
But
sorry, go ahead.
So sorry. So it seems to me like orchestration is really, really broad in terms of what comes under its ambit and umbrella. But then my question to you is, what's been your experience when you speak to, say, developers, maybe even end users, whose problems these developers are trying to solve? You tell them that there's this extremely broad thing that you tell me what you want. And then do you see the gears turning in their heads, or is it like are you seeing these very set a set of use cases where you're like, these are the ones we'll attack first because these solve a big problem, or do you have to be very general and then people come in and say things and then you figure out a way for them to do self-help, because this doesn't seem like it can scale very easily.
So
you guys might end up
So let me narrow, right? Because it's true that I was expanding here because it's early in the day for me. So orchestration is the ability to deliver these complex use cases or rich use cases that cross tokens, chains, and time, right? And so what we find is when I'm presenting that, the fundamental thing is, are you doing something that needs to happen in more than one block? Let's take that as a simple thing. Nobody else can do that. That's orchestration. That's the ability to program across time. I mean, the ability to program these multiple actions. So what it ends up, a lot of these use cases are of the flavor, move some money, swap to another token, and do something on a different chain, right? Going to buy this token and I'm going to stake it on that chain. I'm going to liquidate my position and then move stuff over here and buy that NFT, right? So that's the take transfer and swap, which is kind of the intense subset of chain abstraction, and add an action at the end, add an action at the beginning. There's a lot that people need to do right now with that. What happens is anyone who's got users, or anyone that is doing cross-chain stuff pretty much at all, so if they're doing portfolio management or a staking thing or even a transfer operation, they have the problem of talking to multiple things and trying to coordinate their activity. That's what orchestration is. And so we start with these simple use cases of transfer and then do something, right? Or more importantly, transfer, do something, and with wanting to do stuff later, right? I transfer and stake, and then I want to redeem, or I want to unstake later, or I want to redeem rewards every day, right? And so there's a lot of those use cases where, as I said, anyone who's already got users, their users are probably doing a cross-chain thing manually, and those users show up and go, I love your product, I love your perp platform, but I would like to take the perp yields and go over there and do something with them. And that's not you. I'm going to go away and work with another party because you two don't do anything, don't have a relation, but I want my money back, and I want and I want to automate that process, right? That's orchestration, and everybody who's out there with users has that problem because there is no ability to orchestrate those activities on chain right now. So that fundamentally is what orchestration gives, is the ability to coordinate the activity across multiple chains. If you've got that problem, we're the only platform in town for that.
Understood. Yes, and it's worth mentioning that you guys have recently very gone to mainnet. Congratulations on that. So yeah, guys, you're looking out for any use cases that involve multi-step across multiple, more than one block, then you guys should definitely check out Agoric. Yeah,
I
so
appreciate you calling me out for the size of my answer, because there's this really specific utility that is absolutely there and necessary for these people.
yeah, the size of your answer is absolutely no problem. We have time, and not everyone can speak so eloquently and expound as well as you. So, but I think it was mostly to do with the scope of orchestration, because especially right now, I think it's very important to kind of, and we're seeing this effort from multiple quarters, to kind of define what is the scope, what is
Yeah.
possible today, what we hope to happen tomorrow. And also, I just want to try and understand. So when you speak of orchestration, you're speaking about how platforms can enable it, but you also speak a lot about what users want to do. Do you see orchestration becoming a tool directly for users to be able to express, I want to be able to do these sorts of things, and you guys go and say, okay, we got your expression, we understood what you want to be able to do, we can do this? Or are you thinking that this needs to start at apps,
Mhm.
and what the apps need right now in terms of being able to orchestrate stuff for their users? How are you seeing this like playing out immediately?
Right. So, um, uh, so the answer is, I think it needs to start with apps, right? I mean, going out and, we talk to builders that have a use case that they're building. Almost any use case now needs cross-chain, right? You're building in a
Yeah.
connected environment, and if you're not able to leverage the services of other app chains or other contracts on other places, then you're losing access to potential users, you're losing access to services you can integrate, and any integration ends up losing customers. You aren't retaining them, because the first thing that happens is they get your liquid staking token and then they go over to some other chain in order to deploy it and make some money off it, right? And so app developers, again, especially the ones with users, or the ones that have clear vision about what their use case is, they can tell they need this functionality, and they're developers that can build with it, and we can't touch all the use cases. And so we
Mm,
participate in use cases by supporting those early access partners to extend the system with various, packages or tools or functionality to better accelerate what they need, right? I mean, right now, the functionality that's out there, it can do transfers, staking, unstaking, delegation, the IBC multi-stage transfers. And so it provides the basis for unifying the liquidity of IBC connected chains, right? As we extend to EVM, as we extend to Solana, we'll be able to provide, the movement and liquidity of all those other things. And it provides that in a way where you can extend with the native operations like liquid stake on Stride, or swap on Osmosis, or purchase a ticket on Stargaze, whatever it is. You can leverage that functionality remotely, and it's easy to add that. And we'll be adding some of those as, okay, lots of people are doing a swap. Let's add a helper for that makes it easy to do swaps in an abstract fashion. And that's, the kind of thing that is on the roadmap. Lots of people need to be able to do this, 3-line, here's what I want you to do every 24 hours, run this strategy. That's I showed
mm,
that in Token 2049, what that'll look like. That'll be another package that comes out in the, along the roadmap. And so that extensibility is, lets us support more and more use cases, but our primary focus is enabling builders that get all the way out to the user to enhance the power of their system. Because again, this is, we enable the next generation of Web3 by getting use cases out to users that they want. I think there's a big
mm,
obstacle right now where the users come in and they don't have orchestration to be able to do these rich use cases, and they barely even have chain abstraction. Chain abstraction will help some. Okay, I want to be able to swap and I can just do that. But I want to be able to do this more interesting thing. Yeah, I can't do that. Right? And so orchestration will enable you to do the, I want that NFT. I don't, is it a swap? Is it a purchase? I don't know. Just let me push the button. And so we make that the ability to create these rich use cases more easily. It's the builders that have those use cases directly. And we'll have some, and we'll build some, but the leverage of empowering lots of builders has been the mission of Agoric, and that, and so it's providing that capability across the Web3 ecosystem is the goal.
Fantastic. No, thanks for clearing that up. Very useful insights. Okay, I'd love to kind of now like hone in on chain abstraction a bit more and try and get your views on certain topics considered sometimes controversial. Many people have many hot takes, but I think it'd be great to hear from you, especially because to me, anyone doing orchestration has a couple of options, multiple options in front of them to be able to kind of enable essentially a cross-chain swap. So one option is you orchestrate like, okay, let me give you the example first. I have USDC on Optimism. I want to end up with USDT on Base. Sorry, not on Base, on Arbitrum, for example. And you could help make this happen, orchestrate this by essentially using a GMP provider, your layer zeros, your accelerators, etc., as being able to move basically the USDC from one chain to another, then further as a step to swap that USDC on Arbitrum into USDT and give this to basically you fulfill the user's intent. The other way to do this is to obviously use an intent solver based sort of like design. A provider like this, an easy example of this could be, for example, Across, who let's assume that solvers on Across have this route from OP to Arbitrum taking USDC but giving USDT, and you could do all of that in one step. Do you have a particular opinion on which of these two ways is better, or is it too early? What's your take?
So, I mean, the answer is, developers shouldn't have to care. They should be able to abstract across them, or across with a little a. And that scenario you described isn't really an end user use case, right? That no one wants that. What they want that is to do something at the other end. And so I'm much more focused on, so there's two places where orchestration shows up. What does the user actually want? Let's implement that, right? And that's, do that movement in order to go into that particular fund. So, I want to push a button and go into that fund and you do the plumbing. But the other is that activity of doing that motion underneath the covers, it's got asynchronous work happening, right? Either way, either in Across or in the thing that's doing underlying protocol, there's asynchronous work. Wait for this thing. It might time out. Oh, there might be a different message. My rate of flow is now down. I might want to delay these things, but delay is really hard because a delay doesn't fit in a 4-second block, right? So if I wanted to say I'll handle that next block, yeah, that's suddenly, a couple hundred lines of code in order to do something that in JavaScript is, await, delay 1 second. Okay, now let's move on. And so it's one of those things where even if you are implementing that simple chain abstraction scenario, you're better off having orchestration at your fingertips in order to be able to implement, right? So there's the orchestration of the higher level use case of, I want to do that in order to pay every month for a subscription. So I want to do that transition every month by getting my yield, aggregating it up, and then moving it over to pay my subscription every month. That's the use case I might have that includes in it doing that transfer. And it might well be that 1 month it does it by doing CCTP over and then doing a swap for USDT. Another month it uses Across. Another month, Across is no longer the golden child and it's something else, right? And, the developer just wants to move the money. And so chain, this ability to do orchestration across these things and abstract away from these details without eliminating them. I mean, I might still say, and the service I want to use is Across, but the API should be the same. It shouldn't be, let's discover each new thing when I want to do this next bit of wiring. So that scenario from a user point of view, they don't care. From an implementation point of view, so a thing to realize with the Across scenario, I'm not generally a fan of the Across scenario, in the sense that it is it is a overcapitalization hack because you don't have secure protocols, right? CCTV transfer, whatever you care about, USDC or Circle, that means I'm sending secure messages, and when that finishes, I've essentially cleared and settled, right? I'm done. I've moved the money. There's no back thing where I had to have interest rates in order to rebalance my portfolio and stuff like that. Fundamentally, in across, the more networks there are, the more the across liquidity has to be fragmented, because I can't send money to a chain unless there's a cross presence on it that has capital in it. Right. And so that's a hack that you can spend a bunch of money and lock a bunch of capital to make it available. But if I don't have enough money, if a cross doesn't have enough money at that chain that I want to do something with, then I can't, then I can't transfer money there. Right. It's like, I wanted to buy a house in a small town. There isn't a big bank in the small town. Am I screwed? No, I can wire funds, right? By having a reliable ability to transfer money to a place that didn't have it. Now I can do more things. And so I think that, it will always be the case that something like an across will be important because it bridges to places where you don't have good communication, but good connectivity can give you much faster, more reliable things and unfragment the liquidity. We're doing a project with Noble called Fast USDC to be able to move USDC. They want to be able to move USDC from ETH into Cosmos in less than 20 minutes, which is what it currently takes with CCDP. That's one of those things where if you did an across style thing, then all of the hundreds of chains in Cosmos would have to have an endpoint installed with capital there, so that in case I wanted to send my USDT to, brand new chain X that just rolled out, or USDC to brand new chain X that rolled out, they've got an agent there and it's already capitalized. That's nuts, right? In the Fast USDC case, you end up with a pool in one place that goes, oh, you're sending to there? All right, I'm going to send money. I see what transaction you want. I will take some USDC out of the pool, send it over to that chain, and now it's there in your landing place. You can pick it up and go with it. Or if you've got orchestration, when the money arrives there, it'll immediately do the action that you wanted to do, all controlled from a remote smart contract. That unifies the liquidity. And that unifying the liquidity has some long-term important, valuable, improvements to what you can do in an economy. Actually, not just long-term. I mean, medium and short-term, it has value, right? One of the things that you see in a lot of in these solver systems and in these intent systems is they're great until, oh yeah, sorry, there's no money there. No one's going to route that. You're out of luck. Right. Sorry, new chain. No one can bring money to you. Good luck next time.
Understood. No, thanks for that. That I think is a pretty spicy take in itself. Yeah, but
it's not that they wouldn't enjoy the argument. So
yeah, no, nice. I'm going to try and put up one, but I also need to be mindful of time. I know you have a flight to catch. I will have one question to follow this, but I think this is a very interesting subject, and I think we should probably, especially because I think you and I have differing views here. What would you say about, like, say, for example, the liquidity requirements for an obscure Cosmos chain that's just launched and things like that needs its native token to be able to pay for gas, to do anything on it, right? So USDC, I get, completely understandable. I think they're doing a fantastic job of making sure that it's natively available in as many chains as possible. I think many other people are trying to make sure that it is also available. But what of not only the obscure chains, but the obscure assets? Doesn't it appears to me, at least, that a system like, say, perhaps across, or in any intent solver sort of design, is something that we adopt ourselves, is better served when you have, like, individuals who are able to kind of come up and front this liquidity requirement, as opposed to necessitating a message passing primitive to exist, because it is not trivial in itself. That requires capital and liquidity also. So what do you say to that? Because you can bootstrap liquidity from people and foundations, for example, like the project itself, for these obscure tokens quite quickly, as opposed to saying, hey, layer 0 support this, or is, Circle, please bring CCTP to this particular chain.
Well, Circle brings CCTV to this particular chain. That costs a lot. Right? This is not. This is one of those things where if you can overcapitalize things and you can do, then great. What you're talking about is, well, we've raised a bunch of money. Let's just spend it on, on this economic hack in order to solve this problem. But like with IBC, connecting your chain up to the rest of the world is a parameter change. It's already there. Right. That just, there are these things that outside of the interchain and the Cosmos connected ecosystem, it's like, oh, it's a major event. Our chain connects to that chain. It's like, with IBC, that's just Thursday. Right. This is like, I deploy a web service. Right. And then I'm going to celebrate the fact that people can get to it with Ajax. Right. It's like, I can deploy a web service and Zapier it, in an hour, right? I can, deploy an Amazon thing that will make calls to it, and do API key, distribution so the developers can build on it, in a day, right? This is, what you're describing as being hard. That, if it's hard, change your infrastructure, because that is something we've done since the 80s.
I just realized that as soon as I said it, I shouldn't have used the Cosmos example. I should have said a sovereign rollup on Ethereum.
Yeah, but a lot of these things, now we've got Hyperlane. Union Bridge will then extend IBC out to any EVM chain. There's several. Wormhole is connecting in various ways. So connectivity is cheap and available. What's not cheap and available is the ability to program across it. So from our perspective, interoperability, the connectivity part has succeeded, right? There are EVM interop protocols. There are mechanisms to be able to do IBC all the way to EVM chains. There are multiple other, and it's one of those things where, from a programmer point of view, you shouldn't care, right? That right now, again, it's back to, people are having to build in the equivalent of assembly language. But, in the Web 2 world, I say, make a call over to that thing. And, is it going over secure links, TLS, private networks, all that stuff? That's just DevOps configuration that my program doesn't care about. It's saying, invoke that operation over there. We get the same thing. We want the same thing in programming cross-chain stuff. But it requires the multi-block action that Agoric has. It requires the abstraction power that JavaScript has to be able to do that. But I think that we've done that now. IBC is this connectivity, but again, it too did not have the programmability. So we've now added that programmability and the ability to unify the liquidity and access to functions in the Cosmos ecosystem. And now and we'll be heading into the EVM ecosystems. In well, I won't say when. but next, right?
Yes,
and Solana and so forth, and that should make that connectivity easy, and in the same way that trillions of dollars every day are controlled by orchestration engines built in JavaScript, Salesforce, Bloomberg, all these things are our infrastructure uses, the kinds of architecture that we brought to Web3, controlling microservices, like out of Fidelity and out of, these high frequency trading engines, all these things that are equivalent to, app chains or contracts running on big blockchains. That's what we need to be able to do in order to combine those functionalities and unify that, that fragmented landscape of all these useful services into delivering these nice use cases to users.
Understood. Okay. No, I kind of get where you're coming from. So it's like you look in the traditional world, and behind all how everything runs very seamlessly, you have these gnarly little things about you have this the whole fiat rails, right? You have Swift and clearing houses and these big banks with different codes and all of these sorts of things, and it's all hidden away. To me, it feels like what appears to be hacky and gnarly is sort of like it works because it's efficient and it can spread quite well. But I think what you're also saying is that because we are primarily dealing with like digital assets, there probably are better ways to kind of make this happen between like disparate ecosystems or like even different geographies in the real world, for example.
And in that TradFi, if you will, world, we have the mix of pool style systems and messaging style systems, right? It just depends on which, when I swipe a credit card, there's a bunch of messaging to do transactions, and then it's got a credit thing at the other end. I talk about my simplest example of chain abstraction is I swipe a credit, I open something like DoorDash and order a hamburger. I have no idea what cloud service they're running on. But, if I go to a store and swipe a credit card and get a hamburger, that works here and it works in France, right? My user experience is swipe a credit card, get a hamburger, and I don't know, what bank the merchant uses. When I do it in France, there's currency conversions and foreign exchanges and, exactly these money pools where they do, daily settlements and, someone's hedging them. There's this vast apparatus to get me my darn hamburger, right? That's sort of in some sense something to aspire to, because that apparatus also does, trillions a day or whatever it is in, I guess it's hundreds of millions a day in trade deficit and, and financing of giant ships and, all this kinds of stuff, and gets me my damn hamburger, right? and it's that spectrum has lots of different pieces to it, where when you're writing I want to be able to take a payment, you use a library like Stripe to be able to abstract across all of that stuff. And you use libraries with the same kind of frameworks, all the way down to be able to do these various things. So orchestration is, from a developer point of view, it's like Stripe that lets you abstract across all these services so that you can use the appropriate one in the appropriate circumstance, without having to change your business logic, except for the places where your business logic says, no, here's the counterparties I want to use, right? I mean, it's not that you hide the counterparties, but once you decide on your counterparties, you want to be able to just, great, make the transfer. I'm transferring over this bridge today rather than that bridge, but the transfer invocation should be the same. I shouldn't have to think about it that differently.
Yeah, no, great. No, thanks so much for spending the time talking about it. I think we can spend easily another whole hour, I think, debating this in various ways. But again, like I
love
said,
this stuff,
need to be mindful of time. So hopefully we can get to meet when you're here in Dubai. But yes, before I let you go, I quickly wanted to ask you for your prediction for what this space will look like in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 3 years' time, given chain abstraction we're almost there. Orchestration, we're almost there. What do you think is going to happen? 6-1-5, 6-1-3.
So, so 6 months we'll have extended the power of orchestration to the EVM, and and 6 months we'll be certainly at least touching Solana, right? And extending out to other ecosystems. So the same business logic and programs that says, get me Osmo and now do a swap, we'll be able to say, get me Curve and do a swap, or get me Solana and buy an NFT, or get me Polygon and buy an NFT or whatever. And so we'll be able to do all of this cross ecosystem programmatic stuff. I expect that the subset of chain abstraction providers which are doing account abstraction and account unification, that aggregate portfolio, I know Arcana is strongly in that space. They will, there will be plenty of success in that area, but it will be important that when I do a complex thing, I still don't need multiple user approvals, and so they will integrate these orchestration ability, the ability to some part of their functionality will be built as orchestration, right? They have to do not just talk to each chain individually, but talk about a use case that spans multiple of the chains where I've got assets in different places. I think we'll have a good handle on many of the ideas for how to unify the fragmented world of Web3. They first developed in Cosmos, and the ideas for Handle developed it there. They will propagate out the same way the hyperlanes and the various other bridging technologies and modular technologies have propagated out of Cosmos, and you'll start to see that ability to unify things with broad traction. So I think that people will be focused on, if you don't have a multi-chain strategy, you're an app service, right? If you're a service that other people incorporate into more unified use cases. And I think in 6 months that will be clear that that's what everyone's doing, and it will be clear that that gets you a whole new set of use cases that users care about. I mean, that's that's certainly 6 months to a year, but I think probably 6 months, but maybe it's a year that clearly the thing, anyone who wants to do subscriptions, they need orchestration. And once the first person does subscriptions, that'll be obviously a thing that people want to do because they've been doing it for for 50 years on in other areas. That's clearly a thing, and it's a thing that you can't do in Web3 right now, right? Subscriptions, mortgages, anything that's access over time. And so if we can do that, then we can start to move another class of real world assets in. We can move another class of services in, and that'll then happen over the course of the following year or so. When you get all the way out to 3 years, I mean, all of that has clearly happened, burgeoned. We get the next, somewhere in there, we get the next class of use case. I talk a lot about right now of, you can do transfers. I want to do an action like unbond my position and then a transfer and then do an action. Everyone can understand how, they currently do this thing. They would really like to do it with that money over there. So they are a customer of that, right? So there are people right now that have demand for that right now of any platform that's successful, right? So that's what orchestration serves and opens up as a market now. Chain abstraction to a lesser extent does as well, but these are related. Right? But 3 years from now, now we're talking what's the role of AI in building these things, right? AI is growing in the space of Web 2 orchestration because a lot of that is plumbing and best practices. I don't think that, AI's writing programs, turns out there's a ways to go yet, but for AI, 3 years is a really long time. But the orchestration architecture that, for example, Agoric comes from, it provides the guardrails such that you can understand what an AI is doing. What you don't want is, here's the user intent, here's what the user wants to do. And I mean intent in the broad sense of, hey, rebalance my portfolio. I'm more interested I'm more risk tolerant, for the next year, right? And so I'm interested in NFTs. What can you do for me, right? But if what it then does is produces a Solidity program that does all sorts of crazy crap because Solidity can't do one block things, the people who can't do one block, the program will be opaque to users. They won't understand it, right? And so, so that's one where if you have the orchestration framework where the program ends up being the simple recipe of, take these assets, move them over there, unbond them, do this thing, and that looks like a sequence of actions, even though they take time or they do transition. Now it's a faster to produce those, faster to evolve those, and easier for humans to understand what's happening as a result. And so that growth into that next generation of how does programming happen, again, is helped by having good abstraction services and having an orchestration framework that it can be expressed in. Again, you can generate anything, you can have it write assembly language, but then no one will know what it's doing.
Understood. Yeah, I think that part is especially interesting because I think you can with AI, what orchestration would look like is now the engineers at Agoric don't have to be opinionated of this being the better way to do something as opposed to this, and we'll support this. You instead are orchestrating perhaps this AI agents who are real time determining, we should use this intent solver versus this GNP because better rates or it's much faster or that chain is currently unavailable, things like that. And I think if the guardrails, like you likely mentioned, are in place, then I think you end up with probably a much more richer set of solutions for both developers and users.
Yeah. And for concreteness, what I mean by a guardrail there, right, is if I take your strategy and run it on chain, a simple code that's generated for an AI and run it on chain, nothing it can do can get at Joe's account over there because it simply doesn't have access. Whereas in some of the Solidity models where I'm doing identity-based access control, you're a lot more at risk that clever code can get at more authority than it should. Being able to just run it in a defined container with just access to your assets means that the rest of the world, the rest of the system doesn't care what your strategy does. They aren't endangered by it. They aren't impacted by it. It's just about what it does with your assets. And so it's much safer to compose a bunch of these things in a cooperation environment.
Okay, understood. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, great. I think we're right at time. Dean, been fantastic speaking with you, and a pleasure having you on here today. Any parting words before we let you go?
If you're building an application that has that has users and needs cross-chain, if you're a developer, if you're a builder, check out agoric.com and follow the early access program to go and start building, get help you need, grants you need, what have you. This is a powerful amplifier to the chains and the applications that people are building now.
Great, fantastic. Yes, looking forward to speaking more, Dean, and of course working with you guys. Little alpha for people. There may or may not be something happening between Arcana and Agoric, but more to follow in the future. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully this was useful to you all, and you guys got to learn something about orchestration and a little bit more about chain abstraction. Thanks, Dean, again. Please take care. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your letting me talk to your community.